When it comes to lifting, there's a lot of different belts to choose from. But the problem is people don't even know how to use a belt, let alone have the knowledge required to pick an appropriate belt for them. So what we're going to cover in this video is how to use a lifting belt and which lifting belt is going to be right for you. So stay tuned. First things first, what is a lifting belt and what are they generally used for? Well, a lifting belt is used to brace the back when squatting or deadlifting. I've seen some people use them for a bench press. I don't necessarily know the efficacy of using a belt with a bench press. I've never personally done it, but I do use it for heavy squatting and heavy deadlifting. And here's the point. When you have a lifting belt on, it's not just an arbitrary thing, meaning you don't just put a belt on and start lifting weights. If you're just wearing a belt, the belt isn't doing anything. This is an active training technique. Active meaning you have to do something with the belt on to activate the belt in order for it to work. And what are we saying by work? Work is this. The belt has to be tight enough to where when you push your stomach out, driving your stomach against the belt, since the front of the belt is being pulled, the back of the belt is also being pulled. So what this is going to do, if you're using it correctly, is support the spine. The goal when putting on a belt is to make the stomach as big as possible. If you weren't using a belt, your stomach would need to puff out real big. You're pushing it out as much as you can. So just wearing a belt isn't going to cut it. You have to put the belt on, and it has to be tight enough to where if you push your stomach up against the belt, the back of the belt is now going to move forward, thereby supporting the low back. And that's how it works. So you don't just put on a belt, sit here with it just tight but relaxed, and expect it to do anything. You have to activate the belt by forcing the gut into the belt. That's the way to activate it. That being said, there are several different belts on the market. This is my personal favorite. This came from liftinglarge.com, and it's a clasp-based belt with several different lengths you can set this to in order to work for you. And how this works is, this is relaxed when you're in between sets, and then when it's actually time to lift, you would clasp this, and then when you get under the barbell or get your hands on the barbell for a deadlift, you would activate this by pushing the belt out. So when you get in the cage under the bar for a squat, you're forcing your stomach against this belt hard before you go down for a squat. That being said, this clasp style rigid leather belt doesn't work for a lot of people because it can tend to pinch their skin right here on their hips. And if you get one of these on and it starts to pinch the skin, you can try moving the belt a little bit higher. Then you would go down for your squat, come back up and see if that interferes, see if that starts to pinch. If it still pinches there or it's bothering you, I wouldn't recommend a rigid leather clasp belt like this because there's zero give, there's zero forgiveness. Another style belt is this neoprene style Velcro belt. These work the exact same except for there isn't such rigidity with it. It is pliable and bendable. Same thing though, you would center the belt in the back, you would pull this tight, and then you would push the stomach up against it. For some people, this pliable neoprene style Velcro belt feels a little bit better and it's a little thinner in the front, so it doesn't interfere with the legs as you go down for a squat. As you can see, the width of this belt compared to this belt, it's just about an inch wider throughout. But since it's pliable, this is gonna bend around your body and it might be a little more forgiving. This is a very common belt. This is actually what I got as a trophy for my first strength training meet that I won. I have maybe used this 2 or 3 times. The reason I'm not a fan of this style belt is because of the effort that it takes to clasp it, to get it tight enough to activate. This is where you see a lot of people using the cage to wrap this around and then pull against in order to get these to a spot where it clicks in. I don't like to mess with it. I'd rather use my clasp belt. You just clasp it and you go. If this is tight enough to where it's gonna work for you, then in between sets, it's uncomfortable. And so then you gotta go through all this trouble Or maybe I'm just lazy and maybe it's not a lot of trouble. But for me, messing with this versus just unclasping and clasping the normal belt, it's just not worth my time. And if this wouldn't have been a trophy, I would have never have bought a belt similar to this. You want to say hi, Zine? This is my dog, Xena. She is a warrior princess and she is the gym mascot. And look at these delts. She is muscular. She obviously works out. These are very common. You're going to find these in any Dick's Sporting Goods. Even Walmart has some of these. It's a rigid leather belt that's a buckle style, but it's much wider in the back than it is on the stomach. And I don't necessarily think that this is the best option because it's so thin in the front and it's got that buckle style. Being as though it's so thin in the front, I don't feel a ton of support here. And when I activate this belt by pushing my stomach into it, it takes a lot more activation, meaning I have to push my stomach a lot further out than I would otherwise have to do with a thicker belt. You check out how thin this belt is in the front versus this belt. You see what I'm talking about here. We have a good probably 2 inches of difference in the front of the belt where this is going to clasp versus the front of this belt where the buckle is. Here's another very common belt. It's also the neoprene style with the Velcro, and it gets bigger in the front and thinner around the side here. So if you're dealing with a serious love handle situation, this belt might work a little better for you. Everybody's going to be a little different on the shape of their body and what belt's going to work well for them. But since it is thicker in the front than it is in the back, this is easier to activate than a thin front belt. And it is big enough in the back to cover and get some support as you activate it with your stomach. I do find though that these belts specifically, you have to really tighten the shit out of, and then it's uncomfortable in between sets. And that's why I always return to my clasp style belt. There's something so easy and so satisfying about just being able to wrap this around your back, clasp it into the activated mode, do your set, and then in between sets, just that, man. And just that sound makes me feel like a badass. For some reason, it might have the same effect on you. We'll have to try it out, see what you think. Some people get crazy with belts. If you watch deadlift videos, you'll see people wear a belt really high. You'll see people wear a belt high and then an additional one low. I've never felt the need to do that. Everybody is individuals though. Wearing the belt is a super personalized thing. I think for a lot of people, it supports them mentally more than anything. And even if they're not fully aware of how to activate the belt by pushing the stomach into it, I think just by wearing the belt, just by having it on, they feel like they're more supported. So they're able to lift a little heavier, thinking that they're being safe. But if they're not activating it, it's not really changing things. It's not really supporting the low back like belt should. That being said, I don't recommend wearing the belt for every set. It's one of those things where your low back should be able to support itself at some point and your posture should be good. And if you rely on the belt to lift heavy every time, then when you're helping your buddy move a couch or a fridge or whatever, that's when your back isn't strong enough to do the work on its own. So you start having some problems. So when you're trying to take the boat off the hitch or whatever you're trying to do that involves a deadlift outside of the gym, and you're one of those people that wears a belt just all the time, I don't think that's good. I think you need to build up your spine to the degree where you don't necessarily need it all the time, maybe just for your super heavy sets. Now let's talk about this and how silly I look right now. This isn't something that I've seen talked about, but it's a useful way to use the belt to make sure that your spine is neutral, because a neutral spine, which is a standing position where your chest is up and your shoulders are down and back, that's where the spine should be whenever you're completely relaxed, protects you for squatting and deadlifting. But most people don't know what a neutral spine is. So let me explain this to you. This is a neutral spine in this position. The spine is going to be in a position where all the discs are stacked on top of each other to where the pressure is even. This is not a neutral spine. If you want to go check out my video about shoulder pain, which I'll link right here, in that video it goes over that posture is one of the leading causes of shoulder pain, pressing with the spine out of neutral. So it doesn't matter how well you can activate the belt. If your spine is out of neutral when lifting, you're still putting yourself at risk. This represents the spine. This represents a disc. This represents a nerve. When your back goes out, it's actually likely a disc touching a nerve. So when a disc touches a nerve, the whole body seizes up that area to protect the nerve that just got touched by a disc that bulged into it. So what we want to learn how to do is keep a neutral spine, because if you push this down on the front, that's what gets this disc to bulge like this. If you push it down through the middle, no matter how hard you press, the disc doesn't bulge because they're even, so the pressure on the spine is even, and that's the importance of a neutral spine. So why do I have this stick in my back? If you get one of these PVC pipes from the hardware store, they're a couple dollars at this length. It's going to allow you to be able to practice your deadlifts with a neutral spine. If this is touching in 3 places, right in between your butt, which is kind of tailbone area, thoracic spine, which is in between your shoulder blades, and then at the base of your head right here. Now, when it's touching in all those 3 spaces, that's how you know that you're going to be able to go down safely, grab the bar, and lift the bar in this position. And the same goes for squatting. If you have the barbell on your back and you're able to squat in this position with all those 3 spots touching, you know that you're safe, and you know that your spine has pressure on the discs evenly throughout instead of just on the front, which is going to bulge that disc. So no matter how well you activate the belt, it's not going to do much unless your spine is neutral. So keep that in mind. Okay, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for watching another video of mine. If you're new, please consider subscribing. Like the video if you like the video. If you're coming back to watch this, thanks for coming back, guys. I'm trying to get the channel off the ground. Anything you do helps me. Whether you comment, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff helps out the algorithm. So make sure you show me some support, and I'll see you guys next time.